I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and this is Health and Wellness with Dr. Ed. You know, before we start the show today, I have to say something. We're in our 17th year of doing a show here, and it's just amazing how time has flown. I can't believe it. And when I started this 17 years ago, I never thought I'd be doing it for 17 years. But in any case, I just want to give a big thank you to Robin Hodgen Frick and Ryan Bonai and Kelsey Sylvester for all the work they've done to produce this show, but a special thank you to all you students out there that I've met over the years, and even run into a few to say, hey, I used to do your show years ago, and it's kind of nice. Just want to say thank you for that. So keep up the good work. You guys do a phenomenal job. You know, we wake up every morning and we lie motionless in bed for a few seconds, and you know that world out there is spinning on, just rotating, and you know sometimes you may even feel like you're standing still while the world's spinning. You may even have a headache over it, and it seems like the world today is producing a lot of headaches, and you may even feel helpless. And I think there are a number of reasons for that, and some of it may be because there's some bad people in the world, and some greedy people in the world, and maybe some psychopaths in the world that are in power, and they're dictating to us and what we do and how we do it and why we do it. And this show has always been about information. It's been about education. Maybe even it's been entertaining at times. You know, I've made a few mistakes on this show over the years that I know I've laughed at. And we've had some wonderful guests that I thought were entertaining as well as being educational. But the whole basis of this show is information in order to empower you to be in charge of you. We don't need somebody else telling us what to do. So we're in this crazy world right now, in a crazy world of politics, and everybody telling stories and everybody telling what we're going to do. And I think we're in politics because these people are politicians, and I think somehow they get twisted. But those politicians, the people that are writing the laws for us and affecting us every day, every single day of our lives, it's up to us to make the choice and who's doing that for us. And we really have to be informed as to who we elect to actually, I hate to use the word rule us, but that's what they end up doing. They are in charge of our daily lives. So today I asked somebody from Peters Township, a local person who's running for a local office that's a state office as well, and he is someone who I believe is looking out for us. Let's welcome Steve Renz. Steve, welcome to Health and Wellness.
Thank you for having me on, Ed. Appreciate it.
You know, Steve's been on my radio show, Health and Wellness with Dr. Ed, and I've gotten to know him and really have gotten to understand him and know where he's coming from. And he's coming here to inform us today on why he thinks he can do something for us.
Yeah, so I'm running for state representative in the 40th district. So that's all of Peters Township, all of Bethel Park, and parts of Upper St. Clair.
So a state representative does what, Steve?
So the state representative's responsibilities, the legislature, is to write the laws, to set the budgets, to basically set the legislation that the executive branch will then follow, supposedly, follow in running our state. So again,
so you're writing things that impact each and every one of us every day of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And you figure when the founders first created our government, this was a part-time job. People went in for a couple weeks out of the year, fixed a few things, and went on. Now we have a full legislature working full-time, and in order to get their name in the paper, they have to keep writing legislation, keep changing, keep writing laws, keep doing stuff. And it affects our lives daily just so that they can get their name in the paper. You know, we need to pull that back. We need citizens again running for office who aren't looking for a career in politics, aren't looking to make a name for themselves.
The so-called quote politicians that are in there to use each office as a stepping stone to better their position, exactly, or their income or their standing or whatever you want to say. So let's give a little background about Steve Renz.
So,
Where do you hail from, Steve?
yeah, I grew up in Castle Shannon. My wife grew up in Bethel Park, and we lived in Brentwood for a while. I was 29, 30 years old, and I ran for school board in Brentwood. I was all idealistic. Outcome-based education was being pushed back then. They wanted to close our neighborhood elementary schools, and so I jumped in and thought we could change the world back then. And we did save the schools. We didn't stop outcome-based education. But then, after I left office, everything that I'd done was being undone within a year or two. So it was a little disillusioning, it was a little disappointing back then. So I went on to just raise my family, build a house, and coach sports and do all that kind of stuff.
I would think being a school board member is probably one of the most difficult elected offices there is.
It was very tough. There's a lot, and I was chairman of negotiations, and I was on the building and grounds committee. So we renovated 3 school buildings completely. So we saved the elementary schools because they wanted the neighborhood elementary schools. They didn't want the K through 12 complex back then, So we saved the elementary schools, renovated them. I negotiated the support personnel contract and the teacher's contract, and on all the different panels and boards,
So you had the pleasure of working with the public, working with the administration, and I know that can be difficult at times.
Yeah, and I was just a young guy, and basically, what I've gotten by in my whole life was common sense.
Define common sense, because I don't see that anymore.
I remember sitting there, and then you'd have these, master's degree, educators coming in saying, we should do this and we should do that. And I just ask, well, how does that work when this happens? And they're like looking at you blank, because common sense, you put it together. How does it work in real life? And that's what I've seen. I mean, I've worked with my hands. I was a union steam fitter for 30 years. I did commercial refrigeration. So then 11 years ago, I got a job selling the control systems that I used to install. So I've been in corporate sales for the last 11 years. So, I mean, I've seen how things work, and this helps me in my sales, in my job. I've seen how things work, and then I can present them to the customer because I know how they work and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And looking at our government, looking at our politics, nothing seems to make sense anymore, especially after the last couple of years.
So you have a career.
Yes.
And you started to see things that you didn't like?
Yeah. Well, just think about it. I mean, it's been 2 years now, but people are almost forgetting. In 2020, we had riots, we had lockdowns, mandates, we had, the elections and all the controversy of the elections. And obviously, there was a lot of shenanigans that went on in the elections. There were a lot of different things that were done that were illegal, unconstitutional, that caused a different outcome in those elections. And we're still living with it today. So after 2020, my wife and I were like, wow, we're going to lose our country if we don't get involved and we don't do something. Because I think we've all been kind of asleep too long. We kind of sit back and want to, like I said, coaching and raising families and working on our houses. We didn't want to get involved. We didn't want to make a difference because we thought other people would do that for us. Well, they're not.
Well, there was a change there that went from everyday ordinary living and wanting to build.
Yeah.
To what I perceive as wanting to destroy now. Everything is under destruction. But there was this motivation by fear. And fear was used to control and to mandate and to destroy. And it's not going away. They're still trying to implement the fear stuff. I mean, if you look at everything, it's may cause this, may do this, may, whatever. Getting you in that state of worry, state of concern. Well, you're dictated, hey, you can't leave your house. So you have to cover your face like you're in some kind of cult or something. Yeah. Lies and mistruths, and if you speak the truth, they tell you you're giving mistruths. So so you saw all of that happening.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you even listen to Bill Gates out there right now saying that we need to get used to giving up our freedoms to have security. And our founding fathers warned us against that. If you give up your freedoms for security, you'll get neither.
Boy, I could do 10 shows on Bill Gates.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we saw. We saw we saw people willingly handing over their freedoms because they were terrified, because they were told that there were going to be millions and millions of people dying if we don't give up our freedoms. But
And you know, you mentioned Bill and what he's doing, and if people really knew what he was doing, they would probably really understand fear. This man is telling you that we need to reduce the population of the world, and we're going to do it through birth control, effective vaccination, and health care.
no.
Meantime, he's telling you that he's producing man-made food and you can't eat real food, and he's controlling the growth of the food and owns the plants of the food and owns all the vaccination companies. And it's just insane.
So one guy who had people write a program for him that he still can't keep viruses out of suddenly knows everything about the entire world and wants to rule every bit of our lives.
Yeah, I always got a big, I don't want to focus on this guy, but to me, he's one of the psychopaths out dictating to the world, but my opinion. But you have a guy that everybody goes to about vaccinations like he has some kind of medical degree.
Yeah.
It's funny. Anyway, back to you. Let's stay focused.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's a whole nother tangent. So you saw all of this happening, and you have your comfortable life.
Yeah.
You raised your family, you're working, you're doing what you want to do, and suddenly you want to disrupt that.
Yeah.
So
I didn't want to. I have to.
you have to, because you don't like what you're seeing.
Yeah, if we're gonna maintain a free country, we have to work for it. It's like Ronald Reagan said, it's not handed down from one generation to the next. It has to be fought for, and then handed on to the next generation to fight for it also. And we became too comfortable, and we've let too much go on, and too much of our freedom slip away. So that's why I decided that we had to do something. So my wife and I started out by, getting involved in some local races, helping other politicians run for office. We had the county row offices. We helped them run. We fought against a home rule issue, which we talked about on your radio program. We also helped there was some school board write-in candidates in Peters Township who were unhappy with the current school board. So we worked with them door to door, knocking doors all summer. And so we did all that. We came to the fall and we're like, look, until our election system is secure, none of our freedoms are secure. If we don't have free and fair elections, if we can't trust our vote, then we're going to lose on every one of the other issues that we care about. And so the legislature controls our voting system, or supposed to be, in control of our voting system. And they've done a bad job. They've weakened it. They've undermined it. And we need to fight to get it back, because, again, if you don't have your vote, the only power you have over the government is your vote. If you don't have that, you don't have anything.
Well, I will. You have your vote and your right to bear arms.
Wow.
And the people that are controlling how we vote are trying to take away the right for us to bear arms.
Yeah.
So all that goes hand in hand, and all that is really the definition of freedom and of choice. Yeah. And if all that goes away, then you're China, or you're Russia. Yeah. And anybody that is paying any attention at all has to see what's going on in China. I mean, they're in lockdown. They've taken away people's kids. They've killed people's pets. You're not allowed to leave the house. There's no food. Yeah. And if that's what happened in China, don't think it's not going to happen here.
Yeah, they lock the doors from the outside.
Yeah.
Don't let the people get out.
Yeah. So we have to have people like you who are concerned, and not these people that are in the machine, in my opinion, that are just going with the flow.
Yeah.
And not standing up or not talking, and maybe it's because of their salaries or their pensions. I don't know. Yeah. But
well, the politicians don't want to get into anything controversial, because their main concern in life is getting reelected or advancing to a higher office. And so when that's their concern, it's not about our rights. It's not about what's best for us or what's best for our country. It's about them. They start thinking about themselves. I have no desire. I have no desire for a political career. So I'm just going this purely for, our rights and the people and representing the people of my district. That's
Steve,
it.
We're going to take a break. When you come back, we're going to go into that. I'm going to talk about ballots in Act 77, because I don't think people know what Act 77 is. Okay. We'll be back at Health and Wellness with Dr. Ed, with Steve Renz. Welcome back to Health and Wellness with Dr. Ed. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and we're here with Steve Renz, running for state representative for our district. Steve, that district includes what?
It's all of Peters Township, all of Bethel Park, and wards 3, 4, and 5 of Upper St. Clair.
Okay, and I used to live in that ward in Upper St. Clair, so that encompasses a pretty big area.
Yeah, it's looking at the registered Republicans. It was like 28,000, how doors we had to knock, but of those, unfortunately, only about 6,000 to 8,000 actually vote. So, that's unfortunate. We talked about how we need to get involved. We need to get out and do something. That the very least we can do is get out and vote. And municipal elections, we get like 30% turnout.
Well, it really is we the people, not we the sheeple. And if we don't get out and vote, it is we the sheeple. So your strategy in presenting yourself to everybody is getting out and introducing yourself and knocking on door to door.
Absolutely. I've been spending every waking moment going door to door and talking to people, and in my district, and it's been great. I mean, you hear some stories. I talked to a gentleman. He was a Korean War vet, and his wife, and they were telling me stories. I ran into a woman who actually grew up with my parents in Mount Washington in the 30s and 40s. So it was just really interesting talking to different people and hearing what they have to say. And really, people criticize me for running against a Republican in the primary, but I think the politicians need to get out and talk to the people. If nobody runs against you and you're unopposed, then you don't bother.
Well, that's what creates a politician.
Yeah, they don't bother talking to people, and they lose touch with the people. I'm out here talking to them. I hear their concerns, and they beat my ear or they pat me on the back, one or the other. That's fine. It's great to stay in touch that way, at least.
And so, is there an sounding thing that people are saying that they're unhappy with?
The number one issue is election integrity on the Republican side in the spring here, and that all goes back to the 2020 election and Act 77 mail-in ballots.
Okay, so Act 77 is what?
So we always had absentee ballots. So for 4 reasons under our Constitution, you could vote by mail. Is if you were sick or disabled, if you were away for work or military, if you had a religious observance, you couldn't be there, or you were actually working in the election system and you couldn't be there. That was it. 4
Otherwise,
reasons.
You went and voted. You went to
in person. Everything else was in person
to a facility and voted.
Yep.
On one day.
On one day.
All right.
And that's what even the Supreme Court in the 50s had a great quote. It said, "A citizen in secret is a free citizen." So if you get behind the curtain and nobody can coerce you, nobody could bribe you, nobody could say anything. You vote for the person you want to vote for, and there's no, there's no way that you can be intimidated. But so that was the way it has been for decades. And so now, since the beginning, it was in-person voting. After a couple times they tried to pass a mail-in ballot system, and the Supreme Court threw it out, said you have to change the Constitution if you want to do that. So our legislature in 2019, before anybody ever heard anything about COVID, this was just on their own, and it was the Republicans in our legislature. They passed a mail-in ballot legislation, Act 77, which allowed for no excuse mail-in ballots. So mail-in ballots could be delivered to anybody, anywhere, for no reason in the state. Huh. And that was unconstitutional on its face. They're out there saying now, well, it was good until it was hijacked by the governor or the courts. No, it was unconstitutional when it was written. It should have been put on a ballot, on a referendum, and the people could have decided.
But it was hijacked. Well, it was hijacked.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not lying.
Yeah, well, there were things added to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
what I'd say is that it was hijacked because we left the keys in the car with the door wide open. We gave them all the tools they needed to commit voter fraud or to misinterpret the law. We gave them everything they needed, and then we were surprised that they did it.
I'll give you an example. My niece and nephew went to vote, physically went to the place to vote, and were told that they can't vote because they already voted.
Yeah.
And they never asked for a mail-in ballot, never voted by mail-in ballot, but yet they voted.
A lot of people naively think that, well, it's more convenient that way there'll be more voters, but you have to decide between security and convenience. You know, like I said, our vote is our most important thing. We should be defending it at all costs. But when you make it convenient, I use the example that if a bank wanted to make it convenient, they put a stack of money out on the sidewalk and say, "Come get your money whenever you need it. We know you'll be honest. We know you won't take it." But if you want security,
It doesn't happen at Halloween.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, exactly. Empty the bowl. But if you want security, you take that money, you put it in the vault, and you lock the door. You have to show up with identification, and they check to make sure that you have money in that bank, and then you get your money. That's what we should be. And we worry. We say, well, that's just your bank account. Our federal government spent more money last year than all of our bank accounts put together. So it is, our vote is far more important than even our bank accounts. We should be just as secure on that. So the whole thing of creating these mail-in ballots weakened the whole system. There were a lot of ways that they could be corrupted. And if you saw the movie that just came out, 2,000 Mules, they talked about people taking fake ballots and going drop box to drop box. One night she hit 26 drop boxes in 6 counties. So each one she was stuffing in drop boxes. She had to spread them out so it wasn't obvious. And they went through that whole system, and they talked about the different cities, and they tracked only people that hit 10 drop boxes, and they're stopping at these nonprofit groups to get the ballots, to get the fraudulent ballots. So they went through city to city, and they counted how many mules that they could track were using their cell phones. And the second highest was Milwaukee with 500 mules that met that criteria. The highest was Philadelphia with 1,100 mules.
And so these they're getting paid to do that.
Yeah, they're getting paid. They're getting paid. The one guy said it was $10 a ballot, and he made $45,000. So he delivered 4,500 ballots.
You know,
So, catch that though. Philadelphia had 1,100. They had more than double any other city. And people were saying that there was no fraud in the 2020 election.
Oh, wow.
And they have tracking of the cell phones. They've proven it. And they have videotape of the people actually stuffing the ballots in. They were trying to put too many in at once. They're dropping them on the ground. It was obvious.
Well, it's cognitive dissonance. You know, you keep saying it over and over again, and it becomes the truth.
Exactly.
You begin to believe it, and that's their strategy.
None of this could have been done if we didn't allow no excuse mail-in ballots. So the people that voted for that are all saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna do that now. Now they just, like a month ago, they tried to pass a law saying that we get rid of the drop boxes and ballot harvesting. And it's like closing the barn door after the horse got out. We right before an election, suddenly now, I'm forcing the issue. I'm forcing people to talk about election integrity. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's for election integrity after they've caused so much harm to our system. And these bills aren't even going to get passed because the governor's not going to touch them. Unless we get a Republican governor, we're not going to pass any of these changes.
Well, on that note,
Yeah.
after the governor that we currently have and what he's done to this state, anybody that votes for a Democrat as a governor
Absolutely.
really has their head in the sand.
Yeah.
The only way I can say it. But in any case, I find this interesting. And what are your thoughts on ID for voting? Because you buy a bottle of wine, you got to show your driver's license or some type of identification. You buy a pack of cigarettes, you got to do that. But you can go vote.
You can't get it on an airplane. You can't go to a concert. You can't buy tickets at a ball game without your ID. Absolutely. Mexico, and they all say, well, it's racism. I don't know how they get that, but Mexico has voter ID for all their voters. It has your picture on it. It has your thumbprint on it. And when you go to vote in person, you have to put your thumb down on an ink pad, and your thumb is stained for a week, so you can't vote twice.
Gee, wouldn't that take all of the fraud out of the picture?
Exactly. Well, that's what these people that are pushing against election integrity are want fraud. They want fraud. Obviously, there's no other reason for it than that they want fraud in the system, because I really think that Pennsylvania is a bright red state if we got rid of the fraud in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
Oh, the whole state's red. I mean, you know, they want us to fight. They want Republicans fighting against Democrats. They want everybody fighting each other, because then they can do what they want while we're fighting each other. But if you really look at it and how the state votes, it votes red except for what, a little bit in Erie, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia.
Yep.
So if in that election, you know, the presidential election, all you saw were Trump signs in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, everywhere you went. My wife and I like to take drives.
But
we like
Biden
to take
won,
drives around.
Biden won Pennsylvania. So you got to wonder.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere we went across the state, we saw Trump flags, Trump signs, Trump banners, everything. You know, and it wasn't all about Trump. You know, obviously Trump had his flaws, but he was doing what he promised, and he was defending America, and his policies were building up America. We were doing great right up to the pandemic.
Oh, well.
You know, and you know
the pandemic.
Yeah, when they shut us all down.
Called it one time. Well, you know, just if you want to relate to gas, it was $1.79 under Trump, and it's $4.69 now, something like that. So
everything we look at, everything we going on right now, coming from the federal government, you know, it's scary. I mean, even you hear in the last year, nobody knows about this. 18 food processing plants have been burned, have caught on fire in the last year.
Yeah. You know, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I mean, and 2 of them had small planes fly into them.
But
so it was obvious that they were. This is something going on. This is some kind of terrorism going on.
Don't you dare call it a conspiracy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, so there's a lot going on, and if we as a people don't call it to everybody's attention, we're in trouble.
Everybody's saying that you're a conspiracy theorist. You know, everybody calls people conspiracy theorists, but everything that we've been talking about is coming out to being true. You know, that's the old line. You know, you aren't paranoid if they really are out to get you.
Well, you know. Some things that I've read, the word conspiracy became a bad term by the CIA when John F. Kennedy was shot, because that was no conspiracy. and so, you know, you use that word and turn it against everything, and then you become some freak if you're talking like it was planned. You know.
Unfortunately, we don't discuss ideas anymore. We just name call. You know, people call you different names, call you stuff. If you bring up something, I mean, everybody says you're racist. They use it all the time just to shut you up instead of having a conversation and deciding whose ideas are better.
Well, I got to tell you, when you lock files up for 50 years or 75 years, it's locking up the truth. There's the definition of a conspiracy right there. Yeah. And so all of this is going on.
You mean like the pharmaceutical companies trying to lock up
the vaccines?
Yeah.
Why? Well, if you only lock something up if you got something to hide.
Absolutely.
So, the world's messed up, but you can change that on a local basis with people such as you.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to a break here, Steve. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation on what you feel you can do as a representative of us, because I'll be in your district when you win. We'll be back at Health and Wellness with Dr. Ed. Welcome back to Health and Wellness with Dr. Ed. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and we're here with Steve Renz, running for state representative for our district. Steve, you're a Peters Township resident.
Yeah, I've lived in Peters Township since 2002.
So you have a stake here for what goes on here.
Absolutely.
And
that's why home ownership is important. They say that the things that'll turn you conservative is 1, get married, 2, have kids, and 3, own a home.
Yeah.
And because you have responsibilities and you have a stake in your local government, you have a stake in what goes on for your kids' future, you know, all those things.
So don't you want to just let somebody else take the headaches?
too often that's what we've all done, and I guess I've been a little guilty myself. I could have done more over the last 20 years, you know, but you know, again, when we see what went on in 2020, we look back and say, what could we have done differently? And the problem was, too often we've put all our trust, like we put a president in office and we expect that president to solve all our problems. You know, we expect somebody else to do the work for us, but that's not the way our government was created. It was supposed to be we the people. We're supposed to be in charge.
Well, it is important to have a president
Absolutely.
that's awake and knows where he is at any point in time. But they really can't do a whole lot. I think they can influence a lot, and maybe some of them, like Trump, I think, was able to accomplish some things. He did what he said he was going to do.
See, the problem is, again, is we put that president up there and we have this pile of corruption we put him on and we expect them to do something. So a president, if all the corruption was gone on all those other levels, that president could be controlled by the people. But when you have all the corruption all the way down the line, that president can do a lot of harm to us when he has accomplices all the way through the system. You know, so that's why, you know, we on the Republican committee in Peters Township here, we're really starting to work towards taking back the bottom levels, take back the school boards and the council, and you know, one friend ran for the library board and you know, run for state rep, run for county commissioner, do these kind of things that to clean up the corruption on the lower levels, and that will have an effect all the way up the chain.
Because change starts at the bottom and works its way up, not at the top and works its way down.
Yeah, exactly. So the only way we're going to take our country back is to take the institutions back and you know, and bring them back, bring our whole country back.
Yeah, it's interesting you say take our country back, because I've had that said to me twice in the last 3 days.
Yeah,
We need to take our country back. And I mean, these are just conversations I'm having with people. I'm not out campaigning. I wouldn't be a good politician. I wouldn't be a good candidate because I have like no filter sometimes, and I think you have to have a filter. But
sometimes,
yeah. But you saw things that you didn't like. Act 77 for one. And you want to make a change about that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Again, election security. So my opponent, Natalie Mihaly, is claiming she's for election security now, but she voted for Act 77, which was unconstitutional, which opened up all the fraud that we've been seeing.
Just to remind, we have sometimes an audience that comes in a little bit later in the show. What is Act 77?
So Act 77 gave us no excuse mail-in ballots. And that was, I mean, if you look back, even in 2005, Jimmy Carter, the Democrat president Jimmy Carter, and James Baker, a Republican, had a joint commission, and they said the biggest weakness in our voting system, the biggest area of fraud, is mail-in ballots. And they were talking about absentee ballots at the time. We've gone from having a couple 100,000 absentee ballots, which were under the Constitution. We have the ability, under certain circumstances, to vote by mail. We went from that to millions and millions of absentee ballots that are being filtered through post office or unsecured drop boxes, or, you know, and even another thing, you talked earlier about people going to vote and they were told they already voted by mail when they didn't. Before Act 77 mail-in ballots were brought in, your absentee ballot would go to your polling place before it would go to the county. So on election day, your absentee ballot was there and it would be counted at your local polling place. So if you showed up and said, I don't want to vote by absentee, I want to vote in person, they would void your absentee right in front of you and let you vote in person. Now with the new ballots, they send them all to the county. So if somebody fraudulently voted on your behalf, you have no recourse. That there's no way for you to say, hey, I'm here in person, tear that up. They say, sorry, it's out of our hands. So this has weakened our system on several levels and allowed fraud to be brought in a lot more than we've seen in the past.
Well, it seems today that the whole system's set up to be fraudulent. You got those mail-in ballots, you got these electronic voting machines that are where the votes are being counted in Spain and Italy by companies owned by George Soros.
The servers are overseas. You know, why do we have our voting information on servers overseas? You know, for our country, isn't that scary?
It is scary. So we need people like you who want to make a difference locally, because you change it locally, then it filters up.
Absolutely. And even the voting machines, there's some people coming out now with some interesting ideas, going back to paper ballots. And it sounds, oh, that's antiquated and all that, but nobody can corrupt a paper ballot. They have these watermarked paper ballots that cost $0.25 a piece. I'll pay $0.25. I'll go to the polls. I'll pay $0.25 to have a secure ballot. And then you have a physical ballot that can be counted again and again and again to prove the election. You know, with the voting machines, you know, with computers, anybody can get in there, hack in, alter, change things.
And that was happening. They've proven that was happening.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we got to really reconsider. If we want to remain a free people, then we have to have secure voting. Because if we lose on election integrity, we lose on everything.
So, as our state representative, you're going to fight these little things that you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, the first thing, Act 77 was found unconstitutional by the Commonwealth Court. So it was already ruled to be unconstitutional. 2 other times in our history it was ruled to be unconstitutional, and the court cited those other 2 rulings and said it's unconstitutional, so they threw them out. However, the Supreme Court, that has 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans, put a stay on the Commonwealth Court's order.
You're talking about Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Pennsylvania Supreme Court, yeah. They put a stay on the Commonwealth Court's order, and they're going to evaluate it until they get the chance to look at it. Now they're dragging their feet, so the mail-in ballots are making it through the primary here. But we really need them to throw this out before the general election, because it's clearly unconstitutional. It should have never been passed. And the thing that drives me nuts about this, it was our Republicans that did it. You know, on the federal level, we have the Democrats asking for, you know, all these things in H.R. 1. It was the first thing on their agenda, was the federal takeover of our state's elections. And everything that they were asking for were mail-in ballots, drop boxes, early voting, you know, ballot harvesting, and getting rid of voter ID. So what did our Republicans do? All of that. Our Republicans in Pennsylvania did all of that. So as much as I'm running as a Republican, and I'm not saying that we should, you know, get rid of the Republican Party. I'm saying they need a wake-up call. We need to show them that this is not what we were asking for when we sent you to office. And the best way to do that is to vote them out of office. I'm sorry, it's the only power we have is our vote. We need to vote them out of office if they're not listening to us.
It really is the will of the people.
Exactly. So,
and is anybody listening to us?
Yeah, and that's it. And even we had representatives on the state committee, state Republican committee, reach out to our legislature over the last couple of years and saying, look, this is not what the voters want. And they passed bill after bill, even after Act 77, after the 2020 election, into 2021, they passed HB 1300. HB 1300 reinforced the mail-in ballots, reinforced that the drop boxes were put on us by the governor and the Secretary of State. But our Republicans then enshrined them in HB 1300, and early voting, and early canvassing, and these satellite voting places. You know, all these things are just weakening our system. They also, in HB 1300, allowed ballot harvesting. Now, people don't always understand what ballot harvesting is. It's letting people go door to door to collect your ballot for you and deliver it for you. And
how secure is that?
Yeah, and there was a thing called chain of custody, which was, you know, is so important when you vote in person, but then you're letting just some stranger come collect your ballot. And there was a great article by the New York Post that had he was actually a Bernie supporter, and he was a whistleblower because he was mad because they used his tactics against Bernie when Hillary was running against Bernie. So he spilled his guts to the Washington Post. He says, I would go door to door, I would collect ballots for people, I would go home, steam them open, replace the ballot with a ballot of the people we wanted elected.
Real proud of himself.
Yeah. I mean, the envelope was where all the secure information is. The ballot itself is just a piece of paper you could run off in a Xerox machine, you know.
Which they did,
yeah. So,
you know, I was judge of elections one time.
Yeah.
And every vote was counted with everybody present that was at the voting place.
Yeah.
Put in a lockbox, and that never left my sight. And I had to hand deliver that with somebody else in the vehicle with me to the Washington County Courthouse.
Yep. Yeah, it's supposed to be a Democrat and a Republican together would deliver it to the courthouse. Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't happen anymore like that, huh?
Yeah. You know, everybody talks about, well, we get more voters if you have convenience. But in Mexico, when they instituted the voter ID law, voting went up by like 18% because people had confidence that their vote counted. You know, I run into a lot of people now, it's like, why should I even bother? my vote doesn't count. Why should I bother? And it's like, my gosh, that's just surrendering then.
Well,
We need to outvote the fraud until we can fix the fraud.
Yeah, when apathy sets in, we're in real big trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, when you have a secure election that everybody can trust in, you get more people voting, not less.
So a state representative does what exactly? I mean, every law that gets written by a state representative first before it goes on to the state Senate and state House?
Well, I mean, the Senate can initialize laws, and the Senate, but it's got to be agreed upon by both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and so yeah, we write the laws. And one of the things that is really important, I keep beating on this, is that Justice Scalia used to say that if you're going to send me a law, don't rely on me to judge, to always fix it. In other words, you need to make sure, as a legislature, you need to make sure that it's constitutional before you send it to me. Because anything coming out of our legislature has to be clearly written and clearly constitutional. Otherwise, you allow for these activist judges to misinterpret, reinterpret, and twist laws around and allow things to happen. And that happened with Act 77. At Act 77, they opened this door with these mail-in ballots, and then the drop boxes came, and they allowed them to be counted even though they didn't have a postage mark on them. They allowed them to be counted even though they came in late. They allowed they opened this Pandora's box, and then they cried that all the spirits were released. So all this fraud happened because we opened the box. We should have never opened the box.
How do we close it?
Well, first of all, we hope that the Supreme Court will act justly and throw this out.
Pennsylvania
Supreme
Okay,
Court. If they do that,
that's a lot to hope
it's
for.
gone, and we go back to where we were. That's a good start. And we got to make sure that we don't do this again, that we don't open this box again. Apparently, the Republicans aren't getting the message. And if I were to win, I'm going to say, hey, look, I ran on election integrity. This is all I'm going to talk about. I'm going to, of course, I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment. I want school choice. I want medical freedom. I want all these things. But first and foremost, we got to secure our elections. Once that's done, then we can let the people decide on all these other issues. And fairly, we'll know that it's a truthful vote when we have security. But I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to go around the state, and I'm going to say, hey, look, I ran on election integrity. I ran against the establishment, and and you can do it too, and get more people involved in the system.
So I received something in the mail that referred to you as a liberal, and I thought I started to laugh, and I threw you a text because I've got to know this guy, and I've talked with him many times, and if that's a definition of a liberal, then somebody has rewritten the definition of a liberal.
Yeah.
What do you think that was about?
I've been a conservative Republican for over 30 years, and I've been called things in my life before, but never was I called a liberal before. And it just shows you, first of all, if a politician has to lie to get elected, then they're going to continue to lie to you after they're elected. We're here to represent the people, and then you're going to lie to those people that you're representing. That was just a bold-faced lie. Everybody knows it's a lie. Natalie Mihalik knows that's a lie. And
tell everybody what I'm referring to.
Yeah, well, there was a mailer that went out. It said the liberal Steve Renz, and they actually dug into school board meeting minutes from 1995, and then had to twist them because there was nothing in there to use against me. So they had to even twist them, and they used a picture of me from 1995 with these dark streaks across it to make it look ominous. It's that kind of stuff. Coming out and saying you're for election integrity when you've done more to undermine election integrity than anybody that I've ever voted for, and I did vote for her in the past. So, but it's these kind of things we can't reward. Everybody says that's politics. That's politics. Everybody does it. No, I'm not lying. I'm talking about facts and what she's done. People wanted me to say other things and do other things. No, I'm just sticking to the facts, and I want to get elected on facts. I don't want to get elected by making something up and by making somebody else a villain. I'm not doing it to just be an elected official. I'm doing this to try to make a difference. So I'm sticking to the facts, and I'm pointing out the facts. So we shouldn't reward politicians for making up lies about other politicians. If it's not true, they shouldn't be saying it. And if you can't run on your own record, then you shouldn't be running.
Yeah, it's amazing how marketing is used to twist things and so forth, and then people see a bullet point and now it's fact.
Yeah.
But it never is, and you really have to know what you're looking at. Frankly, if you came knocking at my door, which you haven't, because I'm never home, but if you came knocking at my door, my comment to you would be, I just want somebody to be forthright, honest, and working for me.
Exactly.
And is that what you're hearing from people?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I go to door, most people don't realize. They think, well, she's a Republican. You're a Republican. What difference does it make? It's like, well, she voted for the mail-in ballots. Really? It's like a game changer right there. So that's exactly what people want. They just want somebody that's like them, that's not going to tell them things one day and then when they get in office do the opposite. They just want somebody to represent them, and that's what we're supposed to be doing, representing them. And that means doing what you say and what you ran on. If I run on these issues, I'm going to legislate on these issues. I'm not going to change midstream and make deals with people. They have nothing to hold over me. If I don't get elected, I go back to work in 2 years. If I get elected this time and then they run somebody against me in 2 years, it doesn't matter because I can just go back to work and go back to my life. But while I'm there, I'm going to be fighting as hard as I can to clean up the system. So.
And the systems self-perpetuate. They start rolling on themselves, and it's a fight to disrupt that.
Yeah. Well, again, you can be corrupted when the most important thing in your life is getting reelected or having a career in politics, which I want neither of. So I really can't be corrupted for those reasons. So and that's what we need, more people who. Again, when we talk about the founders looked at this as a part-time job for like farmers to come off their farm for a couple weeks, go to the legislature, look over the laws, pass laws, address issues that are important, and then go back to their lives. This has become a full-time job for these people, and they're there full-time trying to just making more problems that they have. You heard a lot of people talk about it. Every time the government's out of session, it's a good thing because they're not doing any harm. So that's, we need to really get back to that. This should be a part-time job. It is in many states. Many states, it's a part-time job. They go for a few weeks, they go back to their lives. And we could do that.
Well, when you have term limits and you have the concept that you're talking about where it's only a part-time thing, that limits corruption.
Exactly.
When no term limits, I mean, you can get embedded and owing this and owing that and making deals and making promises that may benefit you or whatever, and then before you know it, it's corrupt.
And the higher the taxes and the more money that goes through Harrisburg, the more opportunity for corruption. When they're handling all that money, they're buying votes, they're taking care of favors for friends, they're doing all this stuff. Even in Washington County, we have this LSA fund. It's the casino money. So there was money from the casinos that was supposed to go to offset property taxes. Well, now it gets into a big slush fund that these people, they have a board in charge of it, and they hand it out to the people that come as their friends, and they're, it's that kind of corruption that we have to avoid. And the more money that goes through Harrisburg, the more opportunity for corruption. We need to have less of that money going through Harrisburg, more on local levels, local people deciding how the money's spent, not everybody in Harrisburg.
So people are concerned about taxes, of course. People are concerned about their votes. People are concerned about gun control.
Yeah, well, Pennsylvania's a pretty, pro-Second Amendment state, but there's always attempts to take away our gun rights. That's always working on it.
It worked real well for Australia and Canada.
Yeah, that's it. I had a conversation with a Catholic priest at one time, and he was like, "You don't need an AR-15," and that was back in the day when Haiti was under attack. That they were dragging people out of their homes and killing them in the streets. It was really ugly in Haiti down there. And I just said, well, if those people had AR-15s, would anybody be dragging them out of their house? Absolutely not. So, you know, it's securing yourself in your home, first of all, defending your family, and second of all, being able to defend yourself from some kind of tyranny or crime coming into your neighborhood. You know, that's what the Second Amendment was for. It wasn't for hunting. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, I'm a hunter." Well, that wasn't what it was for. It was for defending yourself and defending your state, and that's what our Pennsylvania Constitution says. The right to bear arms in defense of yourself and your state shall not be questioned. You can't even question it in our Constitution. So, you know, that a lot of people don't even realize that. That's stronger wording than the U.S. Constitution. So, but
I'm not a hunter.
Yeah.
I promise you, I have a gun. I promise you, I have a license to permit to carry it. And you know, you come banging on my door.
Well, the other issue that really has been a big issue is our school systems and the way these school boards are just ignoring the will of the parents and instituting these things. And we just saw there was a meeting at Bethel Park last night talking about how they brought in this counselor without parental consent, without parental notice. They brought in a counselor that talked about her gender transition. So she's talking about surgically removing things and changing it and telling these kids that they shouldn't be named. Their parents shouldn't name them by a gender name until after they decide on their own what gender they are. All this stuff, and all that, and then you got the critical race theory coming in through Mount Lebanon, and what we all went through last year with the forced masking and the almost mandating that everybody had to be vaccinated. Where is this all coming from? You know, we're the parents. We're the parents of our children. Why aren't we making the decisions on these things? Why is the school board imposing it on us?
As you know, we have health and wellness with Dr. Ed Radio on AM 1250 every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Steve's been on it a few times, and I'm actually talking on the next show about the state of California, because what happens in that state tends to migrate eastward.
Unfortunately.
And they're passing legislation there, or it's up for voting anyway. Children 12 years and older do not have to ask permission to get a vaccination.
Yeah.
They don't have to ask their parents whether they should have a vaccination or not.
Yeah, they can't take an aspirin in a school without parental permission.
But you can put some foreign body experimental thing into your body without having to talk to your parents about it.
Yeah.
And there are a number of things that are happening in the state of California that certain people are brought up, and if we don't speak up or have the right representative talking for us, we're headed for trouble. Now, I tend to look at Peters Township, Upper St. Clair, and Bethel Park is really the same area. You know, I live in Peters, of course, and, lived in Upper St. Clair. There are differences, slight. What's your impression? Is it the same group?
Sure. I mean, it's the same people. I mean, I'm knocking doors, talking to people. You have all different classes of people, but again, many of the same concerns. You know,
all the same concerns.
Yeah,
exactly.
many of the
same philosophies.
They're concerned about their kids. They're concerned about the country. They're concerned about what's going on in the world right now, but it all comes back to can I trust my vote? Can I trust who I'm electing? But that's
the number one thing you're getting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, because like I said, they care about all these other issues, but they feel frustrated because they don't feel their votes are counting. They don't think we should have had this president in the White House right now, Joe Biden. They feel that it should have been Trump, that legitimately it should have been Trump. So they look at all the terrible things going on and they say, this shouldn't be happening right now.
So in other words, what they're saying is they went out and voted, it should have been this, but it didn't happen, and they can't see why it didn't happen.
They think that there's no way in this world that a guy that could only get 8 people to show up at a rally beat a guy that could bring 60,000 people into a stadium.
You mean a guy that announced that he was running for I'm Joe Biden, I'm running for United States Senate twice, as he's running for United States
He called his wife
president.
his sister. I mean, that's unfortunate. I don't want to make fun of him because I think he's legitimately, in dementia, and he should have never be. He should not be in that position anymore. I mean, he should be stepping down. He is not well.
No.
You know, I think any doctor could recognize that. You know.
Yeah, well, I don't think you even have to have a medical degree to recognize
Yeah, well,
that
okay.
one.
But back to the school issue with the parents is that they, you know, we need to really give parents back the choice what their kids are taught, where their kids are taught, and how their kids are taught. Why, you know, when did we get to the point where this public school system was the most important thing? You know, we're supposed to educate children. That was what our mandate is from our state and federal governments, to educate children. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a certain way. And when the school system stopped listening to the parents, then the parents have to have an option to take them elsewhere. And if they can take them elsewhere, then the school system's suddenly going to wake up and say, you know, maybe we better start listening to the parents again. So there needs to be an option here.
We're at the end of the show, Steve.
Okay.
Give the audience a statement of why they're coming out to vote for you.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm a patriot, not a career politician. I'm just trying to make a difference here in the country. I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to have a career in politics. I just want to, you know, try to bring our country back here. And again, we use this thing that we're trying to save our country, and it's the truth. I think we're on the wrong track, and we need to make a difference here. So I ask for your vote. Coming up this Tuesday is election day, and you know, I think I've said quite enough.
Yeah, no, you know, you got my support the first time I met you. And because I liked what you were saying and how you were saying it.
I'm not a polished, you know, career politician. I'm not this you know, this suave, good-looking guy. I'm just trying to make a difference. That's all.
Awesome. Get out and vote. Don't get discouraged, but think about who you're voting for, all the way down the line, because I think we are headed for some deep trouble here. Hey, I thank you for watching, as always. Remember, a healthy pet is a happy pet. When you're healthy, you're happy as well. Get out there and vote. And, you know, you can listen to us live every Saturday morning, 9 a.m., AM 1250, The Answer. Also, it's iTunes, TuneIn, Alexa, Google. It's all out there. Hey, God bless. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you, everybody. We'll see.